Children, after the withdrawal of the Ilbert Bill, the people were very dissatisfied with the British, and the feeling of racialism also increased in the country. And they realized that the Britishers were generating this feeling of racialism in the country, and they now decided that they must have an all India organization and a one party which united the entire country together. So this led to the formation of Indian National Congress. Okay, and it is said that it is established in December 1885, where 72 people from all over the country, mostly from Bombay and Calcutta, they gathered in Bombay, sat together, and this led to the formation of Indian National Congress Party. Okay, and who were the early leaders? Dadabhai Naoroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Baruddin Tyabji, W.C. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, S. Subramaniam Iyer. You can see their pictures. This is Dadabhai Naoroji, Surendranath Banerjee, and S. Subramaniam Iyer. Now, actually, it was Dadabhai Naoroji who was very instrumental in the formation of this party, and he was a great businessman living in London. He has written many books. One of the famous book is Un-British Rule in India, and in fact he was very dissatisfied with the kind of British was ruling in India, and he wanted to inspire the young nationalists in our country, and to inspire them he wanted to unite them together. So he was instrumental in the formation of the Indian National Congress. And even a retired British officer called A.O. Hume, he also played a great role in bringing the Indians from all over the country to come together and unite into this and led into the formation of the Indian National Congress. So if you are asked who were the people who were instrumental in the formation, it is A.O. Hume and Dadabhai Naoroji. So you see, children, this is a picture of AOU, who was very instrumental in the formation of the Indian National Congress. In fact, he inspired all the young nationalists of our country to form this association. Children, after the formation of the Indian National Congress, the leaders in the early phase, in the early years, were very moderate in nature, and they took up the task to improve the economic and political conditions of the country. And their method of approach to the British was very moderate in nature. Okay, they would criticize the British in a very humble and in a modest manner, and they believed that the Britishers were not aware of what was happening in the country. So in order to make them aware, they would write petitions. That means they would write letters. Either they would plead to the government or pray to the government that do something for them. Okay, so we say that their method of approach to the British were the P's. That means either they would write petitions or prayers or please. So it was the 3 P's that they would use in order to make the British do something for the Indians. So they're very moderate and mild in nature. And what were their demands? They wanted a greater voice for Indians in the government and in the administration. That means in the administration they wanted more Indians in it rather than the Britishers officials who were there. They wanted more Indians also in the government so that they also get a chance to work with them. Legislative councils to be made more representative. That means they should have elections where Indian people also could be elected and be present in the government. Then they wanted other demands, like separation from the judiciary, separation of the judiciary from the executive, so that the decisions of the courts are independent. They wanted the repeal of the Arms Act. That means it should be taken away, withdrawn. And they wanted more freedom of speech and expression, like they had curbed set up an act called the Vernacular Press Act. They wanted that also to be taken away so that the people could write freely whatever they wanted. And they also demanded Indians to be placed in higher positions in the government. And to be placed in the higher positions, normally you had to appear for the civil service exams. Now these exams were held only in London, and so our moderate leaders of Congress leaders who were very moderate in nature pleaded the government that this exam should also be held in India so that more Indians can appear for this exam and finally get high positions in the government. Now, why did they want high positions in the government? Because they saw that all the important jobs were actually given to the white people, and who earned huge salaries, and they would take away all the salaries to England. That means there would be drain of wealth. All the wealth of India was taken away from our country, and they wanted that if Indians got the wealth, then the wealth would remain in India. So they wanted most of them to get be placed in high positions if they can qualify for the civil service exams, and many could not go to England to appear for their tests, so they wanted this exam to be held in India. And actually this was the leaders wanted to fight against that racism that had started by the Britishers between whites. We were considered as blacks, and so they wanted this to stop and wanted more Indians to be a part of the administration, and also an attempt to reduce the drain of wealth to England. So, because they got huge salaries, they were taking away all that salaries to England, and they wanted that this salary should be there in our country. The early Congress leaders also raised a number of economic issues with the British, and they told the British rule, the British government, that it is because of them that the people have become poor and has led to famines. And they explained to them also that because of the increased land revenue, so almost 55% of revenue they were paying, led to poverty in the country, and then all the grains were exported to Europe, which created food shortage. They would not use any money for irrigation facilities, yes, which led to famines. So they blamed the British rule that because of them we have been reduced to poverty and famines have occurred in our country. And for this, the Congress demanded that in order to reduce all this and the drain of wealth, they must reduce the revenue, the taxes should be reduced, they should cut down on the military expenditure, that too much of money was being spent with the army, and they should increase more funds for irrigation. If irrigation is improved, obviously the farmers can grow more crops, feed their families, and it will also reduce famines in the country. So they demanded all this kind of reduction, okay. And they also passed resolutions that the Indian laborers who were sent abroad should be treated properly, and the tribals, the forest dwellers also should be made to live in the forest so that they can also lead a happy life, okay. And in fact, it was seen that this Congress party, which was formed by the educated class who were very rich and educated, they did not talk only on the behalf of the factory owners or the zamindars or industrialists. In fact, they talked about the common people, what the common people were suffering. So we see they had an overview of the entire country, not only of the rich class. Although it was felt that this Congress party was formed by the educated, who are rich people, have been formed this group, but they worked for the entire country. Now, the early Congress leaders were, as I told you, were very moderate in nature, and let us see how they wanted to develop this kind of awareness among the people. So, let the people know about the unjust rule of the British, how they were looting their wealth and taking away to British, draining the wealth of the country. So how did they develop this public awareness among the people so that people come to know about the British strategy and rule and policies? So the first thing they did was they published newspapers, wrote articles criticizing the British, criticizing them that they are ruining the economy of the country. Through their speeches, through articles, they would send representatives all over the country to mobilize the people, because many people who would not read the newspapers, so they would go all over the countries and let people to brief the people about the British rule and what they were doing. And as I told you, they showed how the British was leading to the economic ruin of the country. But the approach, as I told you, was very moderate in nature. They followed those 3 P's: prayers, petitions, and pleas. Okay, they would only plead to the government. So everyone wondered, ये इतने नरम क्यों है? Why are they behaving like this? Why can't they take a tough stand against the British? Because they felt that the British had respect for the ideas of freedom and justice, and one day they would soon listen to their demands. what the Indians had. They would listen to their demands and would make certain amendments, would really look into their problems and do something for the country. But actually, the Britishers never bothered. They would keep writing petitions, letters, which they would just throw it into the dustbin, and never bothered to improve the conditions of the Indian people. Okay, so we see in the early phase the Congress was very moderate in nature, which was not liked by many of the other leaders in the party. They felt they're too soft. Okay, they have to now take an aggressive stand. So that's what is there in this topic, the nation in the making.